My bride dumped me minutes before the wedding. But she never expected I'd marry the most powerful
You
woman
cheated.
in her family.
They all know. It's over.
No, you can't do this! I can't, I'm sorry!
How
Wait,
could
please.
you? With her?
Please calm down. It's not what you think.
Liar! Everyone, look at this! Let me go! I won't do this!
We have to keep moving.
Chapter 1. The Wedding That Never Happened. The wedding hall was filled with white roses. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above hundreds of guests. And soft music played in the background. Everything looked perfect, exactly like the wedding my fiancée, Emily Lawson, had always dreamed of. Except for one thing. Emily wasn't here. I stood alone at the altar in my black suit, staring at the empty entrance. The guests whispered among themselves. Why is the bride late? Maybe it's just traffic. Rich families love dramatic entrances. But something felt wrong. My name is Ryan Carter, and today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the most humiliating. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The whispers turned louder. Finally, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. A message from Emily. My heart tightened as I opened it. Ryan, I'm sorry. I can't marry you. I deserve someone more powerful than you. Don't wait for me. For a moment, my mind went blank. I read the message again. And again. Each word felt like a slap across my face. Mighty powerful. We had dated for 3 years. 3 years of promises. 3 years of planning this wedding. And now she had left me. With a text message. Behind me, my parents sat frozen in the front row. The Carter family wasn't rich, but we were respected. Today's humiliation would spread through the entire business circle within hours. Across the hall, I saw members of the Lawson family whispering among themselves. Some looked embarrassed. Others looked amused. My fists slowly clenched, then suddenly hall opened. Everyone turned their heads. But it wasn't Emily. A tall woman in a dark red dress walked inside calmly. Her presence alone made the noisy room fall silent. It was Victoria Lawson, Emily's aunt. The real power behind the Lawson family. Unlike Emily, who relied on family money, Victoria had built her own empire. Companies, investments, influence. Even the CS business treated her with respect. Her sharp eyes scanned the room before landing on me. She walked forward slowly, the sound of her heels echoing across the hall. The crowd parted automatically. When she reached the altar, she looked at the empty seat beside me. Then at the message still open on my phone. Her expression darkened. So, she said coolly, "My foolish niece ran away." The guests held their breath. I forced a small smile. It seems that way. Victoria studied me for a moment. Instead of pity, something strange flashed in her eyes. Interest. Then she said something that shocked everyone in the hall. "Since the bride is gone," she said calmly, "why don't you marry me instead?" The entire wedding hall exploded into chaos. Life was about to change completely. Chapter 2. The Wedding No One Expected. For a moment, the entire wedding hall fell silent. Everyone stared at Victoria Lawson as if they had just misheard her. Did she really say that? Marry her? She's Emily's aunt. The whispers spread like wildfire through the room. I stood frozen at the altar, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria Lawson, the most powerful woman in the Lawson family, had just suggested that I marry her instead of her runaway niece. It sounded insane, but the calm expression on her face showed she wasn't joking. She crossed her arms slightly and looked at me with sharp eyes. "Well?" sighed. "Are you going to stand there forever?" My heart was still racing. 10 minutes ago, I was the groom abandoned at the altar. Now, the most powerful woman in the city was offering to take the bride's place. I let out a quiet breath. "Why?" I asked honestly. The guests leaned forward, eager to hear the answer. Victoria glanced around the room at the whispering crowd. "My niece humiliated you," she said calmly. "And she humiliated the Lawson family." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I hate embarrassment." Then she looked directly at me. But more importantly, a faint smile appeared on her lips. "You handled this situation better than most men would." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "You didn't shout," she said. "You didn't break down. You simply stood here and accepted it." She tilted her head. "That tells me something about your character." The room grew quiet again. Then Victoria said something that shocked everyone even more. "Besides," she added casually, "I've been watching your family for a while." "Family?" "Our businesses are small compared to the Lawsons," she continued. "But your father runs them with integrity." She paused. "And integrity is rare." My father looked stunned in the front row. Victoria turned back to me. "So I'll ask again." She extended her hand slightly. "Rankartir. Will you marry me?" Gasps echoed across the hall. The idea was unbelievable. A powerful billionaire businesswoman asking a groom to marry her in front of hundreds of guests. My mind spun with thoughts. But one thing was clear. Emily had already destroyed this wedding. There was nothing left to lose. And somehow, this strange proposal felt like fate giving me a second chance. Slowly, I reached out and took Victoria's hand. The entire wedding hall erupted into chaos. He accepted. This is insane. Is this really happening? But before anyone could calm down, the wedding hall doors suddenly slammed open. A familiar voice shouted from the entrance, "Istopi!" Everyone turned. Standing at the door was Emily. Her white wedding dress flowed behind her as she stared at the scene in disbelief. Her eyes were locked on our joined hands. And for the first time since I had known her, Emily Lawson looked completely terrified. Chapter 3: The Bride Who Came Back Too Late. The wedding hall fell into stunned silence. Emily Lawson stood at the entrance in her white wedding dress, breathing heavily as she stared at the scene before her. Her eyes were locked on one thing: Rand, holding her Aunt Victoria's. For a moment, she looked completely frozen. Then she hurried forward. "Ryan," she shouted. Her voice echoed across the hall. The guests stepped aside as she rushed toward the altar, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. When she reached the stage, she looked from me to Victoria, disbelief written across her face. What is this?" She demanded. Her eyes burned with anger and confusion. "You're supposed to be waiting for me." A few guests exchanged awkward looks. "Waiting?" I raised an eyebrow. "You told me not to wait," I said calmly. Emily's face turned red. That message was just... She stopped, clearly struggling to find the right excuse. "Just what?" I asked. The room grew quiet again. Emily glanced around at the hundreds of guests, watching. Her pride clearly wouldn't allow her to admit the truth. Finally, she said stubbornly, "I just needed time to think." Victoria suddenly laughed softly beside me. The sound made everyone turn toward her. The powerful businesswoman looked at her niece with a calm but cold expression. "Time to think," Victoria repeated. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting." Emily frowned. "Aunt Victoria, this doesn't concern you." "Oh, it concerns me very much," Victoria replied coolly. "You embarrassed the Lawson family by running away from your own wedding." Emily's expression hardened. "I wasn't running away." "Really?" Victoria asked. Then she pulled out her phone. A quiet tension filled the room. "Because I seem to remember you sending a message to Ryan." Emily suddenly looked nervous. "A message?" Victoria raised her phone so the guests closest to the stage could see the screen. "The same message I had received earlier. I deserve someone more powerful than you." The guests gasped. Whispers spread instantly through the hall. "She dumped him for a richer man. How shameless." Emily's face turned pale. "And Victoria, that message was private." Victoria lowered the phone slowly. "You made a private decision that caused a very public scandal," she said calmly. Then she stepped closer to Emily. "And now you've returned. Why?" Emily's lips trembled slightly. Her eyes shifted toward me. "Because when she arrived and saw me holding Victoria's hand, something inside her had panicked. She suddenly grabbed my arm. 'Ryan, listen to me,' she said quickly. 'That message didn't mean what you think.' I slowly removed her hand. 'You seemed very clear about what you meant.' Her voice rose slightly. 'You can't marry her.' The guests held their breath. Emily pointed toward Victoria. 'She's my aunt.' Victoria crossed her arms calmly. 'And you were supposed to be the bride,' she replied coolly. Her lips curved slightly. 'Are we continuing the wedding? Or not?' Chapter 4. The Choice That Shocked Everyone. The ballroom was so quiet that the sound of Emily's breathing could be heard. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the three people standing at the altar. Emily. Victoria. Emily still held onto my sleeve tightly, her fingers trembling. 'Ryan,' she said quickly, her voice desperate now. 'You're angry. I understand. But you don't have to do something this crazy.' I slowly removed her hand from my arm. 'This crazy?' I repeated calmly. Her face flushed. 'Yes.' She sighed. 'You can't marry my aunt just to get revenge on me.' The guests murmured again. 'Revenge?' I shook head. 'You're giving yourself too much importance,' I replied. Her expression froze. 'This isn't about revenge,' I continued. 'You made your choice when you sent that message.' Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. Victoria stood beside me quietly, watching the scene with calm eyes. Then she spoke. 'Ryan,' she said lightly, 'the guests are waiting.' Her tone was relaxed, but the meaning was clear. 'Make your decision.' I looked around the ballroom. The Carter family sat in the front row. My father's face was tense, but there was something else in his eyes too. Pride. Because no matter what happened today, I had endured the humiliation without losing my dignity. Then my gaze returned to Emily. For 3 years, I had believed she was the woman I would build my future with. But today she had shown exactly what she valued most. Power. Status. Money. And when she thought I wasn't enough, she had simply walked away. Now, She had returned only because the situation had changed. Because she saw me standing beside someone far more powerful than she expected. I took a slow breath. Then I turned to Victoria. Her eyes met mine. Calm, confident, unbothered by the chaos around us. A woman who had built her own empire. Someone who never ran away from problems. I lifted my hand and gently held hers again. The crowd gasped. Emily's face went pale. "No, Ryan, wait," she said quickly. But I had already made my decision. I looked toward the wedding host. "We're continuing the ceremony," I said calmly. The host blinked in surprise. "W with the new bride." Victoria smiled faintly. "Yes," she said. The hall exploded with whispers. "This is unbelievable. He's really marrying her." Emily suddenly stepped forward again. "You can't do this," she shouted. Her voice trembled with anger and panic. "You're making a huge mistake." Victoria turned to her niece slowly. Her gaze was sharp now. "The only mistake here," she said coolly, "was yours." Emily froze. Then Victoria added calmly, "You abandoned a loyal man for power." Her lips curved slightly. "And now you're watching him gain more power than you ever expected." The words hit Emily like a slap. Her eyes filled with frustration. Meanwhile, the wedding music slowly began playing again. The ceremony was about to start. And there's Chimi. The bride standing beside me wasn't the woman who ran away. It was the woman who ruled the room. Chapter 5. The Wedding That Changed Everything. The soft music of the wedding ceremony began again. But this Chimi, the atmosphere in the ballroom was completely different. The guests, who had come expecting a normal wedding, were now witnessing something far more unbelievable. The groom remained the same, Ron Carter, but the bride standing beside him was no longer Emily Lawson. It was Victoria Lawson, the most powerful woman in the Lawson family. The whispers across the hall had not stopped. "Is this really happening? He's marrying the aunt instead of the niece? This will shake the entire business circle." At the front row, my parents looked stunned. My mother still seemed unable to believe what she was seeing. But my father slowly leaned back in his seat. And for the first time since the chaos started, he smiled. Meanwhile, Emily stood a few meters away from the stage. Her hands were shaking. This wasn't how things were supposed to happen. When she left earlier, she had been certain Ryan would beg her to come back. She believed he had no power without her. But now everything had turned upside down. Ryan wasn't begging. He was standing beside the most powerful woman in the room. And that woman was about to become his wife. Emily suddenly stepped forward again. "No," she shouted. The music stopped instantly. "You can't do this." Her voice echoed through the hall. Several guests looked uncomfortable, but Victoria didn't even glance at her. Instead, she calmly adjusted the ring on her finger. "Security," she said softly. Two tall guards immediately stepped forward. Emily froze. "Aunt Victoria, you're really choosing him over your own family," she said bitterly. Victoria finally looked at her. Her gaze was calm, but cold. "You stopped being family the moment you disgraced the Lawson name," she replied. The words struck Emily like a hammer. Before she could say anything else, the guards gently but firmly guided her toward the exit. Her protests echoed through the hall. "Ryan, you'll regret this." You're making the biggest mistake of your life." But the doors closed behind her, and the noise disappeared. The wedding hall slowly returned to silence. Victoria turned back toward the host. "Shall we continue?" she asked. The host wiped sweat from his forehead. "Why, yes, of course." The ceremony resumed. Within minutes, the vows were exchanged. Then came the final moment. The host smiled nervously. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Polite applause filled the hall. Victoria looked at me. Her confident expression softened slightly. "Congratulations, Mr. Carter," she said quietly. I smiled faintly. "Congratulations, Mrs. Carter." Around us, the guests whispered excitedly, because everyone understood one thing clearly. This marriage wasn't just a relationship. It was a power shift. The Carter family had just stepped into an entirely new world.